Named arguments. In this lesson, we will talk about named arguments. And instead of determining an argument based on its position, you have the option to identify an argument by its name. Let's create a function. That function will be static void output a number. That function will have two required parameters. First is int x and another parameter int y. Let's call these two variables. So that will be x to x and console write line y equals to y, passing inside this function. So let's call this output number function. It will be var s. Doesn't have to be actually output number. So we do x will be 10 and y will be 40. Okay, now if we console.log write line, we get x 10 and y 40. All right, let's try to change. Like I wrote the syntaxes for named argument x, so we can access an argument by name. In this case, there are two required parameters, int x and int y. Okay, let's try to change them. Let's try to say now y equals to 100 and x will be 300. And now if we try to console the write line, we will see that x 300 and y is 100. Basically, if there are several required parameters, we can access them by mentioning the same name. The argument at position 0 in output number function has the name x. The second position, which is y, we can access the y parameter. When we call the function output number, we can pass the name of the parameter inside here, and that will be called named argument. And we can simply access that variable, that parameter. So we're accessing it with the y named argument goes here and the x goes here. So we can interchange them. And now we're trying to console it. Now x is 300 and y is 100. So that way you can change the sequence of these variables by named arguments. So you can mix named and positional arguments. For example, let's say I want the x be 100, 1000, and I want y be 300. So I do like this. In this example, I don't have to write x in front of the 1000 value. I can simply put 1000 and the compiler understands that by the value of 1000, I'm addressing the x variable. .NET Run, and that will be 1000 for x and 300 for y. Actually, I can name vice versa x 1000, and I'm not going to write anything for y. It's also going to be working. Same output. But now if I try to change them, I'm given y variable 1000, but the second argument is not named. It's going to give us an exception. Named argument y is used out of position, but it's followed by unnamed argument. It's a named argument. That's why we cannot do it. But if we name it x and then give it 400, it will work perfectly. Unless we have something that is not named, it's going to give us an error. So we always want to use names exactly. Let me write another variable s and pass it here, int s. Okay, that also works. Named arguments are particularly useful in conjunction with optional parameters. So let's create a function again. Well, actually, let's take this function and do all parameters as optional parameters. They are required now, but we'll do them optional. Let me give them default value for 0. So that will be int a, int b, int c, equals to 0, int d equals to 0. All of them are optional parameters. And now with the named arguments, we can access exactly the variable we want, exactly the parameter we want. So basically, if we want to access c, we're just write c, the name of the parameter, which is c, and then we do semicolon, and we type the value c. Okay, let's also console write line all of them. So we do first a, console write line b, console write line c, console write line d. Okay, and as we can see, we're accessing the c variable, and that's going to be 10. All right, that's the output. We didn't pass any arguments for a, any arguments for b, and d, and they got the default values. But when for c we passed 10, we named it, and now it just have the value of 10. Okay, let's do maybe a equals 10. So you see the order doesn't matter. .NET Run. Okay, so now a is 10, c is 10, and b and d got default values. So this way you can, in conjunction with the named arguments and optional parameters, you can do a lot of stuff, and you can access the variable you want without any issues.